the one thing that always stuck in my mind was a group that arrived about 3 or 4 weeks after we got online in Vietnam. When I say online, that means we were actually in air operations. They were civilians. They were in officer uniforms, Navy officer uniforms. But their rank insignia was OEG, and that was the Operations Evaluation Group. And they were sent out by Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense, to monitor the operations of the Navy off Vietnam. And I'm sure they were also probably in country in Vietnam, although I have no way of knowing that. But they were like what I call, half of them were statisticians and the other half I think were political operatives. And they would go around and they would ask all kinds of questions of the flight crews. They would check to see what targets you were bombing, and then they would try to look over everybody's shoulder and say, "Oh, you can't pick that target. That's on a list." As we went through all of that, we felt the entire time that how in the world we're going to win this war if we're not let loose to win it. And you could not bomb Haiphong, you couldn't mine the harbor, you couldn't bomb Hanoi, you could do all kinds of things. Well, the way you win wars is you deny the enemy the means of waging war, and you make it so painful that they quit. So obviously there was never any intention of winning the war. We had 500 million people, actually more than 500 million military, U.S. military, not counting the South Vietnamese military. And we couldn't win a war from that little bunch. Well, of course we could have won the war if you get our hands from being tied, and we didn't declare war. We conjured up a reason to do what we did when I remember sitting in Officer Candidate School. I was a young man, and I was studying and listening to a radio, and it came over that the a U.S. destroyer, the Sea Turner Joy, had been attacked by Vietnamese patrol boats, and that was the excuse used to widen the war in Vietnam. Well, it's never been proven that actually happened, and everybody kind of has the feeling that maybe it didn't, and because no one could prove it. I never knew of any patrol boats they had that could get that far, where the location were for those particular destroyers. You got to remember, all of these things get started out of the politicians messing up. And Admiral King, who was Chief of Naval Operations and a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in World War II, he was in charge of all of the Navy. And right after we got into World War II, after Pearl Harbor, he was quoted as saying, "When the politicians get it all screwed up, they call for the SOBs, and I'm the biggest SOB they ever saw." Lyndon Johnson, who was president at the time, had announced in '67 that he was not going to seek re-election. And it's probably a good thing because he couldn't have been re-elected anyway. But he saw that, and he said he was going to spend all of his time trying to end the Vietnam War. And then Richard Nixon, after he took office in '69, eventually pursued the war into the north by using the B-52s and carpet bombing Hanoi and Haiphong. And all of a sudden, surprise, surprise, they came in for peace talks. Now, did we win the peace talks? Probably not, but we got it over with, and then we left. And who knows how long it was going on in the way we've been going. But there was a lot of, during that time, the politics, there were drugs, there were protests. Most of the protests, though, however, were in the Northeast, in what I call the Rust Belt. The protests continued for a while, and the biggest part about it was that they were trying to blame all of the soldiers who 90% were draftees when they came back, and they didn't. There wasn't any honor associated with it. But it was a very trying time, and a lot of the Vietnam vets, particularly those that were serving in country, in the Army, and they came back. They were they felt real bad because it didn't felt like that the people had appreciated what they had done. People say, well, how did the Vietnam War affect you? It affected me by the practical side. We've been pursuing war after war since World War II in a way that we're never going to win it. And I think the American public about had it, not win it. You know, America loves a winner, and they cannot stand a loser. And that's something that people ought to remember.